If you're easily scared, don't watch this at night. Personal spooky story time, and we're gonna call this one That Wasn't My Brother. When I was about 18 years old, I had gone out and I had a very strict dad growing up. If you're Mexican or Hispanic, you know, my curfew was at midnight. Thankfully, my sister would cover for me and she would hide pajamas in the restroom. That way, if I got home late, I would go straight to the restroom, I would change, and if he caught me coming home late, I was already in my pajamas and I'd be like, what do you mean I was in the restroom? So this specific night, I get home past my curfew, I go straight to the restroom, I use the restroom, wash my face, brush my teeth, put on my pajamas. The way that our house is set up is a long hallway, restroom, my bedroom, my brother's bedroom. But as you're walking to the bedrooms, the living room is right here. So as I'm walking to my bedroom, the house is dark as hell. Our front door has glass and the porch light kind of gleams in. So I'm walking to my bedroom and I happen to look in the living room. Right in front of our front door, I see a little boy. And he's standing there. But what's crazy is the way that he's standing in this perfect spot, the light cuts off right here. So I can see from here down, but I can't see his face. His face is literally black. Like I can't see any features. I can't see nothing. I'm not exactly sure what he's wearing, but it looks like overalls or something like that. My first instinct isn't, oh my God, that's a ghost. My instinct is, what the hell is my brother doing awake right now? So I stand there and I'm calling for my brother. I'm literally like, Eric. My brother's name is Eric. So I'm whispering and I'm like, Eric. Trying to make sure that my parents don't hear me because it's about 3 a.m. and my brother is just standing there. And I'm like, God. Eric. Nothing. No movement. Nothing. So I'm literally standing there for what feels like forever, waiting for my brother to cut his shit out and fucking go lay down because I'm about to get my ass kicked. And he's just standing there. So now my wheels are turning and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And when I tell you this is the most I've ever been scared, like I was shook. I was shitting myself. I decide, okay, I'm going to go to my brother's room. Turn on my flashlight. I'm looking and my brother is asleep in his room. I was so scared. I didn't even go back to my room. Like I was freaking out. I've talked about my mom's house being haunted before. What's crazy is that it's inexplainable because my dad built their house. I'd understand if it was like an older house or something like that, but it was a new house. Like I have not done any research on the land, if there used to be something there, if something happened there. I have not done any research, but I have seen and heard so many things inside that house. It is fucking haunted. It wasn't a mimic because now that I think about it, this little boy was definitely younger than my brother, and we've seen him many times. He loves to play peekaboo. We have 2 living rooms in my parents' house, and my mom was always in the smaller living room in her recliner, and a wall separates both living rooms with a half moon, and she says that she'd be there in the morning and this is the wall and she could see the little boy like peeking. And when my mom would go and look, he'd kind of like, or if this is the wall, he'd kind of like, you know, but at least it's a friendly ghost. If you guys have any spooky stories that you'd like to share with me, please send them via DM or email and I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye.
I grew up in a haunted house, and these are my stories. The mimic was an entity that dwelled in the house. And it would do literally what its name is. It would mimic people's voices, but in a very odd and specific way. Mimic someone's voice exactly to a T, but it would sound like it's in low volume. Picture someone turning on the TV and watching it like at 5% volume. That's how low it would sound. It sometimes would sound like it's in the next room next to you, but it's still at that very low volume. Even if someone was like screaming, it sounded very low, like, hey, help. Like very, very low. I don't know really where it came from or if it was already in the house we moved in, but I do have a feeling it manifested the night my sister saw the old woman in her bedroom. On that night, while my sister was inside being terrified by the old woman, my mom and her friend were outside discussing, work and retail life, as you do when you work in retail. While they were talking, they heard someone like mocking them. That was spooky. Sorry. They heard someone mocking them from the back of the garage. Best way I could describe it is my mom would say something like, "Hey, how was your day?" And it would literally sound like from the back of the garage. And they were hearing this and they're like, "What the hell is that?" So as two Latina women who are fearless, what did they decide to do? They decided to go investigate. Like they're thinking, "Oh, someone's in the yard," because they heard it clear as day, someone mimicking every single time they said something. And when they went to the back of the garage, nothing. There was like nothing there. And they're like, well, it's late. It's like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Maybe we imagine it was a long day at work. And then they would hear from now the front of the garage, like just mocking them every single time they said something. And they went to the front of the garage to check it out. Now, you could say it was being a distraction because my sister was by herself upstairs with the old woman, and my mom and her friend didn't go back into the house until they heard my sister scream and then describe what she saw, which was the old woman, the story from yesterday. As I said, I don't know where it came from. It may have manifested itself that night. It may have been brought from the forested area with the old woman. I don't know. But I do know that's the first time we encountered it, and we encountered it many more times after that. But that is the story of the Mimic. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll have another story for you tomorrow.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I live in Oregon, and a friend of mine was having her bachelorette party at a cabin in the woods at the base of a very well-known mountain. I was looking forward to going. A lot of people I care about were going to be on that trip, and I thought it sounded like a really fun weekend just to get away and be in nature. And the first thing that happened when I left my house and I was just on the outskirts of town, I got such a strong feeling to turn around and grab some cleansing tools like sage, Palo Santo, whatever I had on hand. And it was so strong, I turned the car around, went home. My husband's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. I just had to use the bathroom and I don't want to use the gas station." Totally fed him a line because I didn't want him to get worried. It was a really pleasant drive up there, a couple of hours. You're at least in the forest for, I'd say, 45 to 50 minutes before you find this house. This house. As soon as I pull up into the garage, I immediately just have this overwhelmingly heavy feeling that I really can't explain. Two other people had arrived. They were there taking care of a lot of the organizational details. And I walked in, and my two friends are standing in the kitchen here and here. These are pictures of the property. And I walk in, and automatically, just with my sensitivities, I am like, there is something up there that is funky and I don't like it and I don't want to go near it. I feel like I am being stared at and it is highly dark, highly uncomfortable. And so my two friends in the kitchen are like, "Hey Meg, how's it going? We're glad you're here." I'm like, "Yeah, how are you guys doing?" They're like, "We're great." And I'm like, "Yeah. Other than the thing that's up those stairs that's been staring at you the whole time." And they were like, "Oh my God, we were waiting for you to get here because we just had such a weird feeling and we're freaked out and we wanted to know what you thought," because they know I've got like sensitivities or whatever. I walked up the stairs and I got to about this spot right here and I stopped because I literally felt like an energetic wall, like, do not go any further. My friend said, "That's really weird. That's literally as far as we went to before you got here." And we were, they were just checking out the house and they went up into that weird little loft attic area and they were like, "Nope, no further." This is the top of the stairs right here. And if you look way down in this loft area, there's a little door with a crawl space and it was shut when we got there. As people started arriving, we were having fun joking, and one of the women went up there and we were talking about how creepy it was, and she said, "Was the door open when you guys went up there?" The crawl space door had been opened and none of us had been up there. So that night we're just kind of settling into the house, settling into the weekend, trying to figure out what's on the agenda, trying to have a good time. But if you're sensitive, you can just tell from these pictures, the place just had a creepy vibe. Those two same friends are sleeping in this room, and I am sleeping down here, downstairs, alone on a pull-out couch. First thing we notice is the incredible amount of dead insects all over the floor and even in the sheets. That night, one of my friends had her electronics go crazy at 3 a.m. I felt such a heavy layer of darkness. The first night I tried to go to sleep downstairs here on that pull-out couch, I felt like things were staring at me, circling me. I was this close to getting up and leaving in the middle of the night with a 2-hour drive home, rolling in at 5 a.m. with my husband, like, what are you doing? But I got this very clear message: you need to stay and you need to help hold up some kind of energetic barrier. I had a dream when I eventually fell asleep that the entire property was surrounded by fire, and the fire couldn't penetrate this weird line that we were all trying to hold. So I was like, fine, okay, I guess I will stay in this freaky ass house. The next morning, we're all hanging out on the balcony and talking, having breakfast, having coffee, and people start to share their experiences. People were touched. People staying in the upstairs bedroom in the bunk beds had water dripped onto their faces, coming out of nowhere, and there were no leaks in the ceiling. It wasn't raining that weekend. Later that day, when most of the crew was playing yard games, like down here in the grass, one of the women was hanging out over here, and there was a deck of cards that literally got blown, and the cards were like flung into her face. I have no idea how that happened. At this point, I am getting so drained physically and feeling so sick, I need to go lie down. I'm alone in the house again, but I'm watching everybody from outside these windows where I'm at. Gosh, I can't point. And at this point, I'm just praying. Like, I'm here for a reason. These are people that I really care about and love, and I do not want to leave them here because I feel like I can be more helpful trying to hold off whatever this thing is. I did eventually run out to the corner store to test and make sure that the physical symptoms I was experiencing were really tied to the house and not just something going on with me. And as soon as I left the house, I felt so much better, but I had to come back. People were having personality changes while at the house. Like, they would start to withdraw, go take a shower, try and like snap out of it because they just felt something come over them. What I was picking up on primarily that kind of like lived in that upstairs loft area was something that was not nor had ever been human. This sounds really crazy because I've had run-ins with some really, really dark, start with a D word kind of entities. This wasn't even that. It almost felt like not from here, if you catch my drift. But it was, what I saw in my mind's eye was almost like a spidery looking thing. And it's interesting because another woman who was there told me that they saw a spidery looking image of this big nasty thing like crawl from up in this main area down the stairs into the loft area where we were sleeping. And what's odd is that the safe places in the house would change depending on the time of day. It's like the rooms would just start to feel off. Another person said they were almost picking up on the presence of a man, like an older man. I wasn't picking up on a person, dead or alive, definitely a thing. The second night, one of my friends and I were just so uncomfortable about the idea of going to sleep that we just stayed up kind of deliriously talking to each other until, God, it must have been close to 4 a.m. just to not be asleep and unconscious in that environment. What's so weird and actually kind of miraculous if you think about it is that the bride was not affected. She was the only one out of all of us who had no idea what was going on because she was in her soon-to-be-wed splendor. And also, this particular person has an incredible amount of spiritual protection around her. So we were all really grateful for that, and we'd kind of like whisper about what happened to you last night and this happened to me in the bathroom earlier, and we were all just kind of keeping it out of the realm of awareness of the bride, fortunately. By the last morning, I'll never forget, one of my friends had set up a beautiful create your own crepe kind of buffet line. And we were all sitting down around at breakfast, trying to eat and just feeling so uncomfortable, ready to get the heck out of there. Someone said, "So you picking up on anything, Megan?" And it's interesting because at that moment, I felt just this overwhelming cloud, almost like darkness from every angle just starting to swoop in. And I said, I think it's time to go. The way everybody collectively pushed back from this table and popped up and got up and grabbed their stuff and started hauling ass out of there, it was like a scene in a movie. Other guests had weird experiences. I checked the book, paused to read. If anybody knows who this was, I would love to talk to you about your experience. This one's a little weird. I think some dude had a freaky experience and then leaned into the weirdness and hopefully just exaggerated because they didn't know what to make of it. We all stood outside of that house and we held hands in a circle and I kind of led everybody through a grounding and protective and clearing exercise because it was so vile. The husband-to-be was actually having his stag party down the road and they came over because they heard whispers and rumors about what was happening to us that weekend and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna run in and we're gonna take care of it." When they saw the look on our faces and they heard me say absolutely nobody's going into that house, they decided not to go in. I got in my car and was completely silent and white-knuckled my grip on the steering wheel until the tree line broke about an hour later and I was getting closer to home. I burst into tears and started sobbing because up until that point, I had never faced anything that dark or malevolent in my life. A few of us called each other after to process what had happened. It was wild.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Whoa, did I make a mistake? It was around 2005 or 2006. My family and I went to an arts and crafts show in Dahlonega, Georgia. My mom had a booth there and it was a weekend kind of deal. We got there a day early to set up, but the following day, it was around noon. I decided I was gonna go walk around and look at other people's booths and to go try to find some food. There was this like really unique street with some like local mom and pop shops. I decided that I was gonna go walk down, see what they had to offer. You know, it's a little quaint town, kind of looked like it was straight out of a movie. So I started going down the street to these stores and I came across this one shop that looked really interesting. It had like muted earth tones, kind of not vibrant at all. There were store closing signs, and it kind of looked like a bookstore. So I was like, okay, I'll go in and check this out, see what's going on. So I walk in and I'm greeted by this lady who's wearing all black. She has like this lace sleeves that go like all the way down and it goes like over her fingers. Anyway, she had like a goth vibe, neither here nor there, but that's kind of the vibe of the whole place. So I walked around, I started looking at the books, and I noticed that most of them were all like witchcraft books, and there were like a lot of those healing crystals. And anyway, so none of that really interests me. I was getting ready to leave, and the lady stopped me and she said, "Hey, did you go look at the back room?" And I said, "No, I didn't see a back room." And she said, "Right over there." And she pointed to these like really big ornate red curtains. And she was like, "Yeah, it's just back there." So I said, okay, well, I'll go check it out, see what's back there. So I walked back there and she followed like closely behind me and she said, "Hey, I want to show you something." And I said, okay, sure. She takes me over to this triangle that's on a stand. This triangle is wooden and it has like this eye carved into the center. Around the eye was the alphabet and numbers 0 through 9. Around the outside of the triangle, there's like this dial with this pointer. And one could assume that the pointer was to like spell out words. It looked kind of similar to a Ouija board, but in triangular form, if that makes any sense. But anyway, the lady asked me if I wanted to try something fun, which I said, sure. So she asked me to think of a question, but don't give it to her. Don't say it out loud. She told me to look at the triangle, look like right into the eye of the triangle and think of the question, but really focus and think of the question. And then she said that she would leave me for a little bit and come back and check on me. So I did. I looked straight into the triangle eye and looked and thought of my question. And I did this for a few minutes. Nothing happened. And I was like, this is stupid. Like, I'm the biggest skeptic of these things anyway. So I didn't believe anything was going to come from it. But as I was about to walk off, the dial starts moving on its own. Now, remind you, she did tell me not to touch the triangle. Everything had to be done like on its own, so without any interference by me whatsoever. I looked at the triangle. The dial starts moving. It goes to the letter M, and then proceeds to spell out my name, Michael. It did that all by itself. That super freaked me out. And I was just kind of dumbfounded that this was actually real. So I stayed there for probably an hour, like asking different questions to this thing. And every single time it got them right and it was moving on its own. I was super enamored by this thing at this point. And I was like, okay, I need to go get my mom and my sister so they can vouch for me that I'm not crazy and that this is actually doing this on its own and answering the questions. So I decide that I'm going to leave and go get them. But as I start to leave, this triangle starts moving again, trying to keep me there, I guess. But I didn't ask it any questions this time. It started asking me questions. It asked me if I wanted to know my future. It asked me if I wanted to know the day that I would die. Then it asked me if I wanted to be friends. To which I said no to all of them. No, thank you. No. But anyway, against my better judgment, I went and got my mom and my sister. They did not want to come with me at first. They thought I was weird for like even going in there in the first place and I shouldn't be going into witchcraft, blah, blah, whatever. Anyway, but I was so convicted and serious in what had happened that my mom and sister came along against their better judgment as well. So they come back in the store with me. The lady greets us. She's like, oh, I know why you're here. And I go walk to the back of the store. I take my mom and my sister over. My sister's the first one to give it a try. She looks into the eye. I explain everything. Don't touch it. Just think your question. And she asked, like, how old am I? Like, in her mind, she thought it. And it gave the answer. She was freaked out. She said, done. I'm done with this. So then my mom thought that, like, my sister and I were playing a prank. So she was like, okay, I'm going to give this a try. I don't believe either of you. Like, this is ridiculous. So she does it, and she asked what the name of her parents were, and it gave it to her. So by this point, she was freaked out. My mom and my sister were like, peace out, we're leaving, bye. I decided to stay and play around with it for a little bit longer just because I was just so, like, into it at this point. The lady, the shop owner, I guess, she comes up to me and she says that she can tell that the triangle has built a connection to me and she wanted to offer it to me for free. Take it with me. And I told her, no, thank you. I really don't need to get any more involved with this than I already have. And she said, this may be a long-term decision that you will regret. And I was like, well, that's kind of threatening. But no thanks. I really don't. I appreciate it, but no thanks. So I leave. She tells me bye. I say bye to her. Then the next day, I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Maybe I will go back and get it, and I'll take it and show my friends, so my friends will know that I'm not crazy when I tell them this story. I go back. I walk over to the store, and the store is gone. There's no signs. There's no product. There's nothing in this store. And on top of that, it looks like it's been run down and been sitting there for a very long time. What? Okay, that's weird. So most people would say that their story ends at this point, and that was just a weird thing that happened. This was just the beginning. All of this started happening around 2005. Until this very day, things are still happening. Stay tuned. I have more stories. It gets way crazier from here. My ghost story continuing on from part 1. After my family and I get home from the arts and crafts show in Dahlonega, Georgia, a few days pass and nothing happens. Honestly, we tried to forget about that whole experience at that shop in Dahlonega. However, small things started happening in the house that didn't really seem like a big deal at first. For instance, the water dispenser in the refrigerator started leaking water one evening and caused my mom to slip and fall. Lights would start blinking throughout the entire house. I would hear voices calling out my name. Sometimes it would be a female voice, sometimes it would be a male voice. It was voices I did not recognize. This also happened to my mom and my sister. My dad never experienced any of these things. Stuff would just randomly fall onto the floor, and this went on for months. We weren't really connecting anything that we were experiencing to the triangle, and honestly, even today, I still don't want to acknowledge the triangle in terms of it having power, because I just don't want to do that. And just for the record, I do not endorse using these types of things. However, I know my experiences are real and I know what I've seen. I will never, ever, ever touch these type of things again, and I do not recommend that you do either. I don't know how to explain my experience except for just to tell you about it as best that I can. Okay, back to the story. A good amount of time passed with nothing happening until this one night I had a sleep paralysis moment. I've never had that in my life. It was super scary. I remember waking up in bed and having this overwhelming sensation that someone was in my bedroom watching me. I could see a shadow-like figure out of the corner of my eye, and I tried to yell out for help, but I could not move and I could not speak. This was about 2 or 3 in the morning, and I just laid there for a while, and I don't know how long I was just laying there for, but eventually a very loud bang comes from the kitchen. This wakes my parents up. My sister is at college at this point in time, so she did not experience this. My mom yelled out my name thinking that something really bad happened to me, and at this point, I still could not respond. I finally got out of the sleep paralysis and I jumped up out of bed only to fall down to the ground. Why? Because my legs were super numb. When I tried to stand back up, it felt like my legs were jello. So I just kind of had to lay there for a few seconds before my dad comes rushing in. He sees me on the floor and asks me if I'm okay, which I tell him, yes, I'm fine. I fell out of the bed when I was getting up. And I did not have time to explain to him that I was going through a sleep paralysis moment, and I did not even know the terminology at the time. My concern was that someone had broken into the house, so I expressed to him, I think someone is in here because I felt someone in the room with me, and he goes off searching the house looking for who might be in there. My mom keeps calling out my name, and I'm finally able to respond to her and tell her that I'm okay, that I'll be there in just a minute. I had to recollect myself and get up off the floor from having jello legs. As I was exiting my room, there's this hallway right directly in front of my room, and as you look down, you can see the kitchen and the dining room. Well, I noticed something in the dining room. I heard a sound, like a little clicking noise. Well, it was coming from this gas-powered heater that we had. This kind of heater is the kind that you have to push that button down and turn the knob, and then the fire comes on and turns it on. Anyway, so the thing comes on by itself, full blast, just poof. And I just take off to my parents' room. I stay in there until my dad comes back, and it takes him a while, but he does come back, and he says that he didn't see any broken windows. The doors were still locked. Everything seemed fine, but he did say that he noticed that the heater was on, and he asked me if I went and turned it on, which I told him no, I did not touch it at all, haven't been over there. So it was just kind of a moment of confusion, what just happened, what was that noise, we did not know. My mom and I were not able to go back to sleep, but my dad, somehow he managed to go back to sleep. It just didn't bother him as much. But the following morning, I get up to go get me something to drink in the kitchen, and as I walk into the kitchen, I notice something. The cabinet doors were all open. How? I do not know. Why? I do not know. But I went and got my parents and brought them into the kitchen and showed them. They were just weirded out because of what happened the night before. There just really wasn't any explanation as to why that happened. Several months passed without anything happening, and when things did happen, it usually happened at night. That wasn't always the case, but usually it happened at night. So this one night in particular, I was watching TV with my dad. My mom was going to the grocery store. I hear someone call out my name from the opposite end of the house. It was a female's voice. I asked my dad if he heard it, and he said no, he did not. So I get up and I go look down the hallway. You can see the hallway from the den all the way down to my bedroom. I see a shadow-like figure standing by my bedroom door. I can't make out exactly what it is, but I can tell it's like in the shape of a human. So I am standing there frozen, just stunned at what I'm looking at. My bedroom door opened on its own, and then it closed on its own. The moment that it closed, a kitchen cabinet swings open and a glass falls out and breaks. And no, I did not sleep in my bedroom that night. After that happened, about a year passed with nothing else happening. That was until the summer of 2007.
So my trauma must have blocked this out, but I had an encounter with the Mimic, and I'm just now remembering this. So this happened back in my old house, and if you remember from my older story time videos, that house was haunted. I vividly remember this happening back in 6th grade, like a few days before my band concert, because my clarinet plays a big part in this story. And y'all, I went to school the next day like nothing ever happened. So picture this, it's winter, it's cold, I'm already aggravated because not only did I chip my last clarinet reed earlier that day, but now I have to walk home in this horrible weather. And y'all, I despise the cold. Having to walk home every day as the wind is piercing your skin, oh, I hate winter. Anyways, here I am, little 6th grade me, holding my clarinet case and entering the street of my neighborhood, shivering my life away. So keep in mind, I'm home alone at this point. My older brother had practice at his high school. My little brother was at daycare, my dad was at work, and my mom was at the store running errands and also getting my clarinet reeds. So I remember opening the door of my house, and you know when you can feel like an energy shift? Well, I felt something like that. Like the air, the energy, it was just very heavy. But honestly, I wasn't really minding that because my mind was focusing on warming up. So I immediately run to my room, close my door, and I get comfortable. I remember grabbing my laptop and turning on my game, even though in my household we are not allowed to play video games on a weekday, but because no one was home, like, it really didn't matter. Anyways, fast forward, I'm chilling on my bunk bed, and all of a sudden, I hear something drop from outside of my room. So I immediately think that it's my older brother coming back home from practice, and I continue doing what I was doing. About 3 seconds later of not acknowledging this noise, I hear something else drop, and I decided to yell, "What are you doing?" Because keep in mind, if my older brother was in there dropping or breaking stuff, I'm not about to get the blame for it. Now, tell me why I hear a woman's voice go, "Making food." So I remember in that moment, I kind of froze for a bit, and you know when your heart starts beating uncontrollably, and it feels like it's literally like popping out of your chest? That's what it felt like. So I'm sitting on my bed and I'm wondering to myself, why am I feeling this way? Because it was obviously a woman speaking, which means that it was my mom. Why is my body acting like I'm in danger? So I remember getting up, climbing down from the top of my bunk bed and walking to my door. Now keep in mind, this whole entire time, I did not open my door. So the door's closed and I remember yelling, "What are you cooking?" So my mom could hear because I was curious, and plus my mom, she never usually cooks this early in the afternoon unless she's cooking like a big meal. So I wanted to know what she was cooking. So I remember the voice, or my mom, didn't say anything for like a while, and then all of a sudden blurts out, "I'm cooking spaghetti." Cooking spaghetti at like 4 p.m. in the afternoon? That doesn't seem right. So at this point, I was kind of weirded out because, like I said, my mom doesn't usually cook this early, and the tone of her voice was very weird. Like, the voice of my mom was like freaky. It was very monotoned. I don't know. It was just like, it wasn't like, it didn't sound real. So I remember saying one last thing, and this is where things got insane. So I ended up yelling, "I don't smell anything." And tell me why literally 3 seconds later, the voice I once heard from afar is now right at my door. So I remember it laughed and it said, "Open your door and you'll be able to smell it." Y'all, I have never locked my bedroom door so fast. So after I locked it, I remember hearing breathing, like heavy breathing, and this alarmed me because, like, what are you doing? My mom never acts like this. So y'all, I remember I walked over to my window, opened the blinds, and looked to my right, only to see that my mom's car was not parked in the driveway. So at this point, I'm looking at the empty driveway and I'm frozen because who's in the house right now? Like, I literally remember locking my door, and there's absolutely no way that it could have been my brother, because let's just say he was trying to play a prank and speak in a woman's voice to act like my mom. I can easily tell that because his voice is very deep and he's done voice impressions like that before, so I'm able to tell. So I'm just thinking to myself like, okay, is there an intruder? What's going on? My first instinct is to go up on my bed, grab my phone, and immediately call my mom, and that's exactly what I did. So I don't know if maybe this thing or person knew that I was calling my mom, but tell me why, as I'm dialing, I started hearing my doorknob like moving, like it was jingling as if like they were gonna open it, but because I locked it, they could not open it. So I immediately hop off my bed, I run to my door, and I grab the knob so that, you know, it's not turning anymore. My mom, she finally picks up. So she answers the call, yelling at me, telling me how she's almost home, and I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, that's the mom that I know. Not this, like, weird, calm, monotoned voice that I'm hearing. So I confirm out loud that she's on her way, so I go, so you're on your way home? And like I hang up just to indicate to this person or thing that I know that they're not who I think that they are. Now this is where things got even more crazier because as soon as I hung up that phone, my door, whatever was behind it, starts immediately banging on it. So my heart drops to my stomach and I start screaming. The voice keeps yelling, open the door, and I'm still screaming in fear. I remember at one point the banging stopped and the voice started crying. I remember it was a soft cry and it was pleading to me. It was pleading that I open the door because it wanted to see me. And I don't know if it had me like under a spell or something, but something in me was telling me to like open the door. Like I had that urge to open the door, but thank goodness I did not. Like I knew that I shouldn't and I didn't. So about 5 minutes of just hearing these crying, more banging on the door, I finally hear my mom's car beep outside. Suddenly the crying, knocking, and doorknob moving stopped. So in walks my mom and my brother because she ended up picking my brother up from practice. And I remember her yelling, Jordan, open the door, I have your stuff. So I remember I wasn't too sure about opening the door because what if that thing was still there and it was just like altering my reality? Anyways, my mom did end up grabbing her keys. She opened my door and she instantly started yelling at me. She was like, I don't know why you have the doors closed. You know not to have your door closed, this, that, yada, yada, yada. At this point, I was relieved, like getting yelled at by my mom. I was like, at least you're actually the real person. But y'all, I haven't told anyone about this. Like literally after it happened, it like disappeared from my brain. Like the trauma said you're not gonna remember this, but I truly believe I encountered the mimic and I'm just so thankful I did not open up that door because whew, I would not be here right now.
Paranormal Storytime. This is by far one of the scariest paranormal stories that I've ever heard in my life. And I'm warning you right now, if you scare easily, do not watch this video. What I'm about to tell you had me scared for days. A young girl by the name Bella, she wanted to go to one of her cousin's houses, so she asked her mom, hey, can you drop me off? And her mom agreed and said, yes, I'll take you. When she gets to her cousin's house, 2 of her cousins are there, and their names are Maddie and Alyssa. The afternoon for these girls was filled with teenage joy. Like a typical girls' day, listening to music, gossiping, scrolling through social media, but boredom, as it often does, crept in. And one of Bella's cousins, Maddie, suggested they walk to a cemetery. Alyssa and Bella are like, no, we don't want to go. Maddie's persistent, like, come on, let's go, it'll be fun, a little spooky adventure. Maddie was persuasive enough and convinced Bella and Alyssa to come with her to the cemetery, which was about a 5 to 10 minute walk from the house. As the girls approached the cemetery, they went through the back entrance. They did not want to go through the front. As soon as they got there, Bella felt like they were not alone. Right off jump. She just felt so uncomfortable, like, she's like, we are not the only ones here, like, something is not right. And she didn't want to go anyway, so she was already on edge. For 30 minutes, they wandered amongst the tombstones. They started to have a good time. They're laughing, chit-chatting. At this time, it's around 6 to 7 p.m. And they were all alone, or so it seemed. And this is when Bella's phone rang. Bella looked down at her phone at the caller ID, and it says, Mom. Her mom, who just had earlier dropped her off at her cousin's house. She picked up the phone and she's like, hey mom, what's up? And this is when everything takes the creepiest turn. Her mom's like, Bella, where are you? Her mother's voice sounded frantic, almost strained. Bella's like, Mom, you dropped me off at Alyssa's. What are you talking about? Bella's confusion quickly turned to alarm. What? Like, what? Like, she's just so confused, like, what the fuck just happened? Then Bella and her 2 cousins' phones all start glitching out at the same time. Their apps are closing in and out. The phones are coming on and turning off by themselves. All of their phones just started to not work. Then in the calling app that popped up on Bella's phone, it started entering in the number 24 over and over and over again. 24 flashing repeatedly on her screen. This is when Bella's heart dropped into her stomach. 24 was her cousin's basketball number who died in a car crash 3 years earlier. That's not even the craziest part of the story. Just wait. wait. All three of the girls got up out of the cemetery very, very fast. They were heading back to Alyssa's house. And as they tried to leave the cemetery, a big branch from a tree fell like within 2 to 3 feet away from them and almost hit all of them. When they all got back to Alyssa's house, they sat in the front room and pretty much just went over the events that had just happened, and these young girls were obviously scared, as anybody would be. They all go to bed and wait until the next morning. The next morning, Bella is still shaken up, and she decides to call her mom. Her mom picks up and she's like, "Mom, about last night." Her mom's like, "Yes, sweetie?" She's like, "Why did you call me asking where I was? You knew you dropped me off at Alyssa's." And there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Her mom doesn't say anything. She's like, "Bella, honey, I didn't call you last night. I lost my phone, and I just found it this morning right before you called." "Excuse me? Say what? What did you just say?" Bella's like, "Then who called me then? Like, it was your voice, like I spoke to you." And the question just hung in the air. Who called? For protection of the victims in this story, I did change their names. This story was submitted to me by a follower of mine. If you have a creepy paranormal story time that you would like to be told, you can DM me your story on Snapchat, Instagram, or here on TikTok at Crime Queen. You girls stay spooky, and I love you. I'll see you in the next one.
I had a follower send me their mimic/doppelganger story, and it is terrifying. According to her, it all kicked off in 2021, and her husband would be gone a lot because he was in the military. He would be like out in the field for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, and during those times, she would just feel a presence in her home. At the time, this really freaked her out because she was pregnant with their first child, their daughter, and so she would light prayer candles every single night before she went to bed. It would just give her comfort. And she would just leave them lit throughout the night, and one night she wakes up and they're all out. And she thinks it's weird, but she has to go to the bathroom, so she kind of just ignores it, gets up, and as she's going to the bathroom, she hears what sounds like a woman singing from her daughter's nursery, which is literally right next to the bathroom, like singing, humming. She said it sounded like a lullaby. The nursery at the time was just being used for storage because, of course, she was pregnant. When she leaves the bathroom, like rushing to her daughter's nursery, the humming is just getting louder and louder and louder, and it doesn't stop until she actually opens up the door. Obviously, there was no one there humming. And about 2 weeks later, her husband is home from the field. Well, her husband had just finished using the bathroom. He's kind of coming out to the living room, and when he sees her, he like jumps out of his skin. He's so scared. And she like laughs. She just thinks like maybe she startled him. And he says to her, "Did you just sit down there?" And she says, "No, why?" Like, she's on the couch with her cookies, she's under a blanket, she's comfy. And that's when her husband tells her that he just saw her walk into their daughter's room. And he was really confused when this happened because it looked just like her, except for some reason she had long black hair. Over the next couple of months, her husband swears this keeps happening. Like, he will see the back of her head, except it's never the back of her head. She just has this long black hair, but she's always wearing the same clothes, and it looks just like her. And she'll be walking into a room as he's kind of like walking past. In October of 2021, she gave birth to their first child, their daughter, and she found out shortly after that that she was pregnant with their son. And nothing happens until about a month after her son is born in 2022. And of course, it was one of those times where her husband was gone in the field and she's going to the bathroom. I don't know why the bathroom is attached to so many weird happenings in this place. But as she's in there, she hears a sound coming from her daughter's nursery. Now this is really concerning because when it happened the first time, she was pregnant with her daughter. Now her daughter like lives in that room. And so she immediately gets up from the bathroom. She's going down the hall to investigate. And it sounds like there's something tapping in her daughter's room. My cat has joined us for the story, but she goes into her daughter's room. She's like, "What is this tapping sound?" And that's when she realizes it's the blinds in her daughter's room, like hitting the window over and over and over again, as if somebody is sitting there and like moving them back and forth. She also then notices that her daughter is like upright in her crib. Her hair is a mess. Her daughter is like freaking out, crying. So she immediately scoops her daughter up. She takes her to the bedroom. She has her other child in there. Both of the babies are crying and screaming and everybody's freaked out. And she's on the phone with her in-laws like, "What do I do?" Her father-in-law comes to the home to come check things out, just make sure everything's okay. And of course, nobody's there. She's kind of like, "I'm sorry I called you out. I swear to you, I know what I heard." And shortly after this, that apartment, that place where they lived, actually got broken into. And so they immediately moved to a townhome, which is where the rest of this story takes place. She probably at this time wasn't thinking much about the paranormal activity and the weird mimic stuff from the last place because they're in a new home and she had bigger fish to fry. Like, their place actually got broken into. But she would sometimes notice that her daughter's closet light would be on when she would enter into the room, and she just would ignore it. She was like, I don't really want to bring this energy into the new place. I'm not going to acknowledge it. Until one day her husband calls out to her and he says, were you just watching me go to the bathroom? And she calls back from the living room. She's like, no, I'm on my phone. I'm watching YouTube in the living room. And he says, I saw you again like last time, but this time you were peeking around the door at me while I was using the bathroom. And of course she's freaked out because her husband just saw that thing again after so much time without any activity. And so she starts cleansing the space pretty routinely, and the activity dies down again. And once again, she's like, okay, we're in the clear. And then there's an incident where they have a bunch of guests over and her daughter drops a glass, and she decides to put her daughter into her room in this new townhouse just so they can clean up the glass and she won't get hurt on any of it. Her husband is like, don't worry, I'll take care of it. You stay with her. And so she stays in the room with her daughter. They're like laying on the floor playing with toys when suddenly her daughter sits up, and she's like a year and a half, 2 years at this point. And she lets out this blood-curdling scream while looking into her closet, the same closet where the lights had been coming on occasionally, and the original person who sent me this email doesn't know why. She walks around this room and she's telling whatever this is, like, no, leave her alone, get out of here. Eventually, her daughter calms down. And at the time of sending me this email, she had said that her husband was leaving for 9 months. And she felt like the thing was going to act up again once he was gone. I didn't find this email until literally like today, and it was sent a year ago. So I'm going to email her back and ask if anything else happened. But in my original email, she asked for advice. So if you guys have any ideas for how to get rid of this thing, if she's still dealing with it, let her know down below. She'll probably read the comments. But yeah, this is such a terrifying mimic story. So what do you think? Stay spooky, friends. I have an update for the insane mimic story that one of my followers sent me, and it is so terrifying. If you didn't see the first part, I'm going to give you a quick summary. My follower had been experiencing what seemed like a mimic in multiple homes, something that sounded like it was humming from her daughter's nursery, something that presented itself to her husband as her, like as my follower, but with long dark hair. And it was all happening in one apartment that they then moved out of, and in their new townhome, it started happening too. And where we left off in part 1 was that at the end of that email that I was sent by my follower, she said that she was really nervous about her husband being gone for 9 months with the military because she felt like whatever this was waiting for him to leave. The problem is that she sent me that email a year ago and I just found it like last week. So I reached out to her and asked her for an update, and what she gave me is crazy. A month into her husband leaving for 9 months, I mean, she is just feeling really nervous. She said the separation anxiety is kicking in hard. One night, she wakes up around midnight, and when she wakes up, she was so hot when she was sleeping, there was like a puddle of sweat beneath her, but the house is freezing. And she's like, whoa, this is like way colder than it usually is. Not weird for her to sweat during the night, but it is weird for the house to feel this freezing. And she gets up from bed to go adjust the thermostat. And as she's going downstairs, she ends up falling down like 4 stairs. The weird part is that she hears something giggling after this from her daughter's room. She thought maybe her daughter heard her falling down the stairs and was like giggling at her. So she pokes her head into her daughter's room. Her daughter's dead asleep. And something I mentioned in the last video is that her daughter's closet light kept turning on its own. And when her mom looks in that closet, the light is on. She ends up lighting a prayer candle for her daughter, and as she goes to check the thermostat, it says it's 72, and she's just really confused why it is so cold in her house. She really just doesn't know what to do, and so she reaches out to someone she describes as a lovely medicine woman who practices herbalism. Basically, she gives her the rundown of what's going on. I think that the person who sent me this email also sells like crystals and stuff, so I think they're like business acquaintances. But anyways, this woman says that she's going to do a candle reading for my follower. And when the candle reading comes back, basically the herbal medicine lady is like, somebody put evil eye on you. She ends up doing some things, including an egg cleanse, and eventually gets like 6 months of reprieve from whatever this thing is. It seems like this thing just comes and goes at random. Things have been chill for months. So one night, she's laying in bed, just scrolling on her phone through TikTok, and you know how it is when your eyes just start getting really heavy, and she's kind of falling asleep when suddenly it feels like her entire body just starts shaking. She has this cold chill run right down her back, and she feels like she needs to open her eyes again. And she's laying on her husband's side of the bed where she's been sleeping while he's been away, and as she turns over, she sees what looks like a woman in a long white dress with matted hair staring back at her. And it's like hovering in the air, staring at her, she says. And it had these like long talon claws. And she is completely terrified. It is dark in the room at this point. It's just like her and her cell phone. So she grabs her phone, turns on the flashlight. And of course, when she shines the light where she saw this woman, nothing's there. And she says this thing that almost seems like her protection mantra, which is, if you are not from the light, be gone from my sight. And it seems like this always gives her a little bit of peace. So she says it, and then she tries to go back to bed. Somehow she falls asleep, but of course, something wakes her up. This time, it's what sounds like somebody whispering. And so she opens her eyes, and on the side of the bed, crouching in front of her, is the woman in the long white dress with the matted hair. Except this time there were no like distinguishable features. She was just a silhouette. And this woman whispers, "Now you see me." And the woman who sent me this email literally grabs her iPhone and chucks it at this lady. Of course, doesn't hit anything. The phone just goes flying to the other side of the room. She was terrified. Did not sleep in her bedroom again after that. Decided to sleep in the living room. In the month that followed, a lot of weird things did happen, but nothing to that extent. And then what's really strange is that she ends off the email by saying that when her husband got back, they ended up separating. But what's interesting is since then, since she separated from her husband, nothing has happened ever again. She said, "I think whatever it was attached to my husband, not me or my children, and it didn't like how strong of a presence I made in his life. But who knows?" No matter what, I'm really thankful for this update, and it's just really weird because her husband was the one who saw what looked like her with long black hair, and then she sees this thing with like a long white dress and like matted hair. Was it this thing that was like attached to her husband, or so she thinks? I don't know. You guys are gonna have to let me know what you think about this one, but so happy to finally have an end to this story. Stay spooky, friends.
So this person is asking people to tell their ghost stories that sound not true at all. And I grew up in a haunted house, so I have quite a few of those. So I grew up in a suburban neighborhood in New Jersey. There was really no reason we thought our house would be haunted, but it was really fucking haunted. There was only one family that lived there before us, and I don't think any of them died in the house. So I'm in my bed. It's like 10, 11 o'clock at night. I'm probably like in middle school or early high school, and I have my door closed because I slept with the light on because I was afraid of the dark, because you would too if you lived in a haunted house. But my parents didn't care. They were like, we need to sleep in the dark, and their bedroom was across from mine, so if I slept with the light on, I had to keep my door closed. So my door's closed, chilling, playing video games in my room, in my bed, and the door opened, just like a smidge. It opens a smidge. And at first I think it's my dad on the other side of the door, because I see kind of a masculine figure. I see facial hair. I'm like, okay, that's probably my dad. And so I'm like, okay, Dad, I'm going to bed. I'm closing my DS. I was not closing my DS. And I'm like, I'll go to bed soon. And then it starts laughing at me. Not like laughing, but like a chuckle, like a hee hee. And I'm like, haha, yeah, Dad, I'm going to bed. I promise. And then my door opens even more. And I'm like, ooh, that's not my dad. That is not my father. About a year or two later, the movie Insidious came out, and if you know the movie, you know exactly where I'm going. This person on the other side of the door had like dark maroon skin and had like bushy hair, bushy beard, and like yellow eyes. And I'm just sitting there in my bed, stunned. This thing is still like chuckling at me. It's like, hoo 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 hoo. And it's not sleep paralysis. Like, I can move. I just don't want to. I'm like terrified. And it keeps laughing until it goes shh, and then closes my door. And I never saw it again. Never had saw anything like that ever again until I saw Insidious, and I was like, oh my God, that's the guy. Obviously not based on me or anything real, but like it was the closest thing I had seen to what I saw that night. But yeah, I just remember going back to playing Dragon Quest 9 after because I was terrified. So, thank you, Dragon Quest. Love you.
This video is about ghost, and I don't mean ghost in dating, I mean real ghost. So 2 days ago, I was supposed to hang out with my brother and his girlfriend. We planned to have dinner in a building. The name of this building starts with a B, and it's very popular. You guys know it. I've heard a lot of stories about this building, but I was like, well, I wouldn't have that kind of experience anyways because I never did. And it should just happen when you're sad or when you're ill. But that's not true. Like, that was like one of the worst experience that I have ever had. I arrived at the building before my brother, so I decided to go upstairs first. I parked my bike and got in the elevator. I could see that floor 2 and floor 4 have restaurants, and I pressed floor 4 because I simply thought, okay, if the restaurant that I supposed to go to is not on floor 4, then I can just walk down to floor 2. It's a lot easier than climb up from floor 2 to floor 4, you know? As the elevator doors opened, there was no one. There was no one. And the light was off as well, but it was not pitch black because the way the building is designed is that there is an open space in the middle of the building. So if you stand from floor 4, you can actually see the other floors down there, and the light of floor 2 reflect to floor 4, so it's not that dark. There are 2 escalators in the middle of the building as well, but it's blocked because they renovate on floor 4. But I didn't know that it's renovated, so I walked out of that elevator. I was walking around to see if there's any restaurant, just to make sure that there's no restaurant opening. And that was such a stupid thing to do because, I mean, like, if there is, then the light would have been on, right? But anyways, I was walking around, I didn't see anyone. I saw a restaurant is renovated, and that's why, like, they stop people from going upstairs. I walked back to the elevator, pressed the button, and I was like waiting. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you guys that as soon as I arrived floor 4, I could hear someone singing. She was singing so loud. I mean, like, really, really loud. And okay, maybe someone is like practicing because it's near Lunar New Year. So it's not like a very weird thing that someone is like practicing singing, right? Her voice was beautiful but scary at the same time. I can't explain how scary it sounds like, but it's very similar to, like, you know, in those ghost movies where the ghosts sing. But I didn't really pay attention to that. As I was waiting for the elevator to go upstairs, because I didn't pay attention and I didn't care, I think that's the reason why she started to sing louder. What the fuck? At that point, I questioned myself, could it be it? Could it be ghost? I was shaking, you guys. Like, I was shaking, not much, because I tried to calm myself down. Okay, it's just someone practicing. It's just someone practicing. You're thinking too much now. Like, you're overthinking. But because I was so scared, I tried to find a way to go downstairs without waiting for the elevator. I tried to look for the stairs, but I couldn't see it. As I was like walking around, I saw that room with lights on. And I walked in that room. As soon as I walked through that door, she stopped singing. Then I saw a guy. I asked him, do you think if there is any other way I can take to go downstairs? He said, yeah, you can go downstairs by the stairs, but I think it's better to wait for the elevator. I was like, what do you mean by it's better to wait for the elevator? Like, but I didn't want to know the answer. So I didn't ask him further, you know, like, why is it not okay to go down by the stairs? And so I asked him, is it possible for you to help me wait for the elevator? Because I don't want to stand out there alone. He was hesitant, but it was really lucky of me that he decided to, like, okay, yeah, sure, I can go out there with you. As we were waiting for the elevator, I quickly asked him, do you think if anyone is singing around here? Because I think I heard someone singing. And he was like, no, there's no one up here singing. I was stunned. I was speechless, you know? I was stunned. Oh my god. Yeah. Anyways, it was horrible.
This is a terrifying story about a mimic. New Year high. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and not so recently I opened an email where anyone who finds this page would be able to send in their ghost stories. And this story is definitely up there with one of the scarier ones I've read. So let's get into it. This story comes from Savannah, who starts off this whole email by telling me this all started when her and her friend Faith were watching scary YouTube videos at her house. When it was time for Faith to go home, Savannah asked Faith, "Hey, do you want me to walk you to your car?" And what Savannah's house looks like in my mind is a walkout ranch. Specifically because she says there's a long driveway down to where Faith's car is parked in the grass. So Savannah and Faith walk down this driveway, get to Faith's car, Faith gets in, and Savannah goes back inside. And Savannah in this email specifically says that she made sure to be inside before Faith left because the videos that they had just watched together really freaked her out. And maybe 30 seconds pass before she gets a call from Faith, who's still parked at the end of her driveway. And Faith asks, "Are you still standing at the top of the driveway?" And when Savannah told Faith, "No, I ran back inside before you even started your car because the videos freaked me out," Faith says back, as she was pulling out of the driveway and pulling onto the street, she looked back up and saw Savannah standing there. So she rolled her window down and was calling out to her. And Faith asks whoever that was, "Hey, why are you still standing there?" And Faith obviously did not get a response. And Savannah's friend also mentions that Savannah's face of the one that was standing at the top of the driveway was kind of red, and it looked like there was paint all over her face. But Faith continued to say, "But I don't know because it was dark out and I couldn't really see." And that night, Savannah could not sleep. A couple weeks later, Savannah's on a walk with her brother, and their mom calls Savannah and asks what she wants. To which she obviously replies, "What are you talking about?" And her mom says, "You've been calling me from your room for the past 10 minutes. What do you need?" And obviously she was not home. Then a few days after this, Savannah's grandma says that she heard Savannah's mom calling her, the grandma, up to her bedroom, and when the grandma peeked in, Savannah's mom was sleeping. But that is unfortunately not where it ends. Savannah mentions that she does live in Florida, and during Hurricane Helene, Savannah and her friends were all out sitting on her porch watching the rain come down. And they decided to download a ghost app and try to talk to ghosts. And Savannah says that they were getting some pretty weird responses, but nothing scary, until Faith, the one that saw that thing at the top of her driveway, jumps up and says, "Did you guys hear that?" and ran inside of Savannah's house. And that clearly freaked everyone out, so they all followed Faith inside. And when they asked her what was going on, Faith looked like she was gonna cry. And Faith says that she heard a little girl's voice say hello. One of their other friends suggests, "Hey, why don't we get back on the ghost app and see if that little girl responds?" And the app started saying some really weird stuff. Words like burning, fire, dead, escape, kill. So Savannah looks up if there were any fires in their town. And there was. In 1959, in this town, a man burned a hotel down, and when he was interrogated about it, the police had gotten a tip from someone that said this guy was offered $20,000 to burn this hotel down, and when they asked the suspect, he denied it. Savannah concludes this whole email by saying that she does not think it's a coincidence that the app was saying the things that it was, and they found out about the crime. And I do just want to make note that she did send me the newspaper clipping of this happening in 1959. I'm not going to include that because there's just too much information about her in this story where I don't feel comfortable posting her little town too. And at that point, there'd be a lot of people. If you guys have been following for a long time, pause on the story. You know that sometimes when I'm filming, I hear a little, and I just heard it. I don't know if I'll have to check if it's on here. But anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for my ghost stories.